My name is Ruby, and I'm 26 years old. I don't have a full-time job and have mostly kept to myself since middle school. I went to high school briefly but dropped out, so I only finished middle school. Since then, I've been living with my parents, working part-time jobs, and doing freelance work from online ads. I have an older brother named James who is 3 years older than me. He's very different from me. He's good at sports, has lots of friends, and is outgoing. James never wanted his friends to know about me. He never brought them home, and if we bumped into each other and his friends in public, he would ignore me. I accepted this and saw it as someone else's problem. Once James went to college and moved out, I stopped worrying about it. Then he started talking about getting married when he turned 29. It wasn't a surprise. Later he decided to bring his fiancée to our parents' house. That day I was at home when my brother arrived with his fiancée. "Mom, Dad, I'm back," I announced. My brother seemed surprised to see me sitting with our parents. "Sorry to interrupt," his fiancée said politely as she entered, unaware of my brother's reaction. When she greeted me with a puzzled look, I could tell she was silently asking my brother, "Who is this?" He probably hadn't mentioned me to her. "My name is James's mother," my mom introduced herself and my dad. The fiancé nodded politely but still looked confused. My dad didn't say anything about me. My parents have always been tough on me, especially compared to my accomplished brother. When we were young, they used to say things like, "Your brother can do it, why can't you?" But things changed as we got older. Eventually, they even started calling me a burden. It seemed like they planned to ignore me during this meeting too. "I'll go get some more drinks," my mom said as she got up. She whispered in my ear, "Why are you here? Go back to your room." I had come to this gathering hoping to connect with my family in my own way, but it seemed to be going wrong. Despite that, I couldn't just leave, so I stayed where I was. My brother's fiancée introduced herself as Emma. She was my age, 26, and very beautiful and elegant. She gave off a vibe that made me feel like I shouldn't talk to her casually. My brother seemed irritated. He probably didn't want me there. He introduced Emma to our parents, but he completely ignored me. I felt invisible. After discussing their upcoming wedding, the conversation turned to lighter topics. However, my brother continued to act as if I didn't exist. Then James asked, "So, Ruby, what do you do these days?" Before I could reply, my brother cut in, "Never mind, Emma, you don't need to talk to her," he said firmly. Emma looked visibly surprised. "Oh, okay," my mom quickly added, "Don't worry about it." "Yeah, don't worry. She's just a distant relative," my dad remarked, and that was the final straw for me. A stranger, huh? I thought. It seemed like reconciliation was never an option from the beginning. The meeting ended as if my presence didn't matter. Whether I was there or not, my brother and Emma soon got married and started building their own house to live in. My brother works at a well-known company and has a good income despite still being in his 20s. Emma decided to be a stay-at-home wife and quit her job. When my brother's house was finished, we received an invitation to their housewarming party. It was going to be a small gathering with Emma's relatives and my brother's bosses. My mom fretted, "Oh, it's done already. Time flies. We need to pick out a nice housewarming gift." My dad shrugged and said, "We're family, it doesn't have to be anything fancy," as he casually set aside the invitation. Only my parents' names were on the invitation, mine was missing. My mom seemed to notice but still asked, "Ruby will be coming too, right?" I wasn't sure what to make of it. They hadn't exactly introduced me well at the last gathering. "It's okay if I'm not invited," I declined, but my mom insisted, "No, you're coming. I'll make sure of it." So I ended up going to the party. On the day of the event, it suddenly started raining. My parents and I took a taxi to my brother's house. Because of the rain, my brother and his wife didn't come out to greet guests at the entrance. When we arrived, my mom turned to me and said, "You pay for the taxi," then hurried inside with my dad, both without umbrellas. That explains it, I thought. Our house was quite far from my brother's, and taking a taxi seemed extravagant. I ended up footing the bill for the ride. After paying, I rushed towards the entrance, where Emma asked me, "Who are you?" We had only met once before. Maybe she forgot. Assuming so, I introduced myself again. "I'm Ruby, James's sister," I replied, trying to introduce myself. But Emma smiled and said casually, "Oh, the high school dropout, interesting." We didn't invite the freeloader living off their parents. My brother had just returned and overheard this. He looked at me with disdain and asked, "What are you doing here?" "James, I told you not to invite her. Why is she here?" Well, I'm not sure either. My brother clearly didn't want me there. Emma's attitude towards me changed once she learned who I was. Actually, she's even worse than my brother and parents. Would it have been better if I hadn't come? I asked my brother cautiously. "Yeah, you're practically a stranger with your lack of education. Not finishing high school doesn't even count," my brother replied coldly. Emma chimed in, siding with him. "Could you please leave the property now?" Her calm expression throughout was truly unsettling. "Got it," I said, turning away. The taxi we arrived in was gone, and since we weren't on a main road, finding another one looked tough. I didn't have an umbrella. I walked slowly, getting soaked in the rain. I could hear Emma laughing behind me. Eventually, I made it back home. My parents returned looking happy. They saw my wet face and asked, "Why did you leave suddenly?" "Couldn't you call a taxi to get back?" "You're so useless," my mom complained, like it was expected. "Sorry, I suddenly felt sick. I lied to cover up. You left on your own over that. You're hopeless. Don't forget to give them the gift later. You're an adult," my dad scolded me. I had prepared a gift for the party but brought it back without giving it. I wanted to send it by mail, but I didn't have the address. I could ask my parents, but things felt awkward, so I decided to contact my brother instead. "I want to send a gift. Can you tell me the address?" That's all I asked my brother. His reply? "I don't give my address to strangers, okay?" I sighed deeply. Is it really amusing for him to assert dominance over me in private, not just embarrass me in front of others? It was baffling. Maybe Emma was there too, typing away and laughing at the situation. Either way, it was absurd. I gave up on sending a gift to congratulate my brother and his wife on their housewarming party. Instead, I decided to leave home. I realized I couldn't connect with my family anymore, so I chose to live independently. Despite only having part-time work, I had some savings. With that, I managed to rent a room and live on my own. It wasn't much, so I decided to try streaming videos in my spare time. I already enjoyed watching streams as a hobby and was good at spotting trends among popular streamers and finding ways to increase views. When I started streaming, I began earning tens of thousands of dollars each month. As my income grew, it covered all my living expenses. With the money I didn't need for daily life, I started investing, and those investments turned out successful. Encouraged by this, I ventured into running a small business importing and selling goods. I kept busy and felt fulfilled every day. I didn't have a family complaining about me spending too much time on a computer. A few months later, I received a call from my parents, who hadn't contacted me since I left home. "We need you to help James financially," they said. "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. I wondered what had happened to my brother, who had just built a new house. Slowly, my parents began to explain the situation. "Apparently, after moving into his new house, your brother started hosting frequent parties and interacting with various people, bosses, executives, clients, and Emma's friends. During one of these gatherings, someone proposed an investment opportunity and your brother trusted them. He ended up losing a large amount of money, drawn in by the promise of quick, high returns." I was stunned. My brother had a stable job, so it seemed like such a big mistake could have been avoided if he had just focused on his work. "Who recommended this investment? Could it be a scam?" I asked. "No, it's not. It was suggested by one of Emma's friends," my parents replied, placing full trust in Emma. "How much money do you need?" I asked, shocked by the amount. It was far more than an ordinary company employee could easily lend. Is that really how much my brother needs to borrow? I hesitantly questioned my parents, fearing the answer I knew was coming. We were also approached with the same investment opportunity. My parents hesitated before admitting. "I can't come up with that much money easily, I'm sorry." I tried to end the call, but they insisted, saying, "We're your family, help us in times like these." "Family? It's too late for that. I'm busy, and I'm practically a stranger to you now, right?" With that, I hung up. Later, somehow they found out and showed up with my brother's family at the office of my company. I was in a meeting at the time. My secretary informed me, "There are guests here for you, Mr. President." "I don't have any other appointments scheduled. Who are they?" I felt uneasy. I apologized to my business partner and briefly excused myself. When I reached the reception area, I saw my pregnant sister-in-law Emma, my brother, and my parents. "You're running a company, huh? It's much smaller than where I work," my brother smirked, glancing around my office. "Who are you?" I asked bluntly, pretending not to recognize them. "What's with the attitude?" my brother shouted, losing his temper. My mother stepped in and explained, "We discussed this before, but we really need your help. You're successful with your company, so you can support us, right?" She asked for money shamelessly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Yeah, it's a critical time for our family. Emma is pregnant, and the baby's health isn't good, so we need to see a good doctor. Please, Ruby," my father and Emma added, making it sound like it was my responsibility to solve everyone's financial problems. Employees passing by the reception area glanced over with concern. Wanting to end the situation quickly, I said firmly, "Please leave. You're causing a disturbance." My brother erupted in anger again. "What? We're a disturbance? We came all this way and that's how you talk to your family," he yelled. The employees stopped to listen, facing them. My brother started causing a scene. "Do you all know she dropped out of middle school? She was a recluse, no good. He seemed determined to humiliate me into giving him money. However, the employees responded in a way my brother didn't anticipate. We know. Everyone is aware of the president's background, including me. The president hires many people from similar situations. Is there an issue? One of my employees responded calmly. My brother, who usually socializes only with highly educated and wealthy individuals, seemed taken aback and stumbled over his words. Well, my father began. What a sorry excuse for a company, just a gathering of misfits. My brother joined in. Exactly. Companies that do business with a place like this can't be any good either, he shouted loudly. At that moment, the president of the company I was meeting with stepped out of the reception room, having heard the commotion. My brother's expression turned blank, then pale as he faced the man. The president approached him directly. What's the matter, James? Emma asked my brother. Idiot, don't say my name, my brother whispered urgently to Emma, but it was too late. James? Oh, it's you, the company president said as he walked up to my brother. You are the guy who manages the division at Mr. Long's company, right? We greatly appreciate your company's services. It turned out that his company was also a client of my brother's business. My brother was visibly sweating, his face flushed with embarrassment. Well, I suppose we're not that memorable since we're not a big company, my brother faltered when the president turned his own words against him. He visibly froze. Sensing the tension, my father, mother, and Emma fell silent. Ignoring them, I apologized to the president again, determined to defuse the situation. I'm sorry for taking up your valuable time. I'll ask them to leave. Oh, are you sure? I have time today, so I don't mind waiting. Your family is important, the president offered. No, they're not my family, I asserted, glancing at my parents and brother's family. They're complete strangers. Following that, my parents and brother's family were escorted out of the company. Perhaps stunned by the president's unexpected intervention, they left quietly. Curious about how my business became exposed, I decided to investigate. It turned out Emma was the catalyst. She had a friend who was well connected in investment circles and always kept informed. This friend came across information about a young woman in her 20s who was gaining recognition as a skilled trader and company owner. Emma was shocked to see a photo of this woman in the media and realized it was her husband's sister, whom she had heard was a middle school dropout. Emma shared this discovery with my brother and parents, suggesting they approach me for financial help. When their attempts to reach me during the day went unanswered, and I didn't return their calls about money, they showed up at my company. Since I had been treating them as strangers, I decided to distance myself from them. However, my curiosity led me to look into Emma's friend who had been involved in my family's financial troubles. To my surprise, that friend turned out to be Emma's ex-boyfriend, and it appeared they were still connected in some way. The situation with Emma turned out to be even more shocking. The child she was carrying wasn't my brother's but actually belonged to the investor she had been involved with. No way! My brother was devastated, understandably so, as everything had been based on lies. It became apparent that she had been manipulating several men for money under the guidance of her ex-boyfriend. Naturally, my brother and Emma divorced, and both of them are now in police custody. Unfortunately, the money lost in the investment won't be recovered anytime soon. Following the incident at my company, my brother's career took a downturn. Despite being in his 20s, he was moved to a less prominent department and eventually resigned, likely frustrated by the financial troubles and personal turmoil. As for my father, he faced repercussions after the president witnessed him losing his temper with a subcontractor at work. An investigation into his behavior led to his termination. It came to light that he had a history of belittling those without higher education, similar to how he used to treat me. So both my brother and father ended up losing their jobs. Despite their decreased income, the former family still tries to contact me, suggesting we live together again. With everything that happened, we're still family, right? They try different tactics to cling to me, but my response remains consistent. I don't know you. You're complete strangers to me. I have no intention of giving any other response in the future. I've made sure they can't enter my company's building anymore.